When Jay and Sally White bought 2 acres in Brenham as a weekend getaway from their Houston jobs, they wanted a place to garden.
We bought the property in October, so the first thing that we did, we bought a tiller and we tilled it up and we had a row garden. No fences or anything.
Now it's home full-time. Sally teaches second graders in Brenham. Jay works online from home and commutes a few days a week. Jay also writes for Texas Gardener magazine, putting his hands-on experience into print.
And this used to be a coastal field. Everybody's familiar with Bermuda, but coastal Bermuda is just special. I mean, it's much more aggressive than your normal Bermuda for your lawn. And after that first fall garden, I saw how aggressive it was in the fall. I couldn't imagine what it was going to be like in the spring. In the spring, it was just unbelievable. And the other thing is that I live on a blackland prairie. So I had 2 huge problems. I had coastal Bermuda grass, and then I had sticky black clay. So once you build your rows and you water, it really wasn't much fun to go into the garden, because when you came out, your feet were going to weigh 10 or 12 pounds covered in the clay.
That spring, they built a fence and planted a potager with raised beds filled to the brim even in winter.
The potager was designed for food production, but it's also designed to be pretty. And so I have flowers in the potager. I mean, we have salvias, we have foxgloves, we have hollyhocks. We have almost as many flowers in there as we do vegetables. We sat down one night, laid out the dimensions, and decided what we wanted it to look like. And so then, as a gift, I mean, my wife and I, we have everything we need, so we always ask our kids to give us free labor. We have 5 kids, and so I joke and say I have a small army of son-in-laws. Well, I do. I've got 4 daughters, so I have a small army of son-in-laws and future son-in-laws. And so one Easter, I asked them, I said, look, all I want you guys to do is come and help me lay these bricks. So before they got here, Sally and I had laid out the beds. They came and we dug out in between the beds, we dug out 1 foot. Weeds are a problem for an organic grower. So after we excavated, one thing that I always do is I put down newspaper. And so we put down about 8 rows of newspaper in the bottom of those ditches. And then I brought in 6 to 7 inches of decomposed granite. And so we put the granite down over the newspaper in the walk paths, leveled that out, watered it in, let it settle. Then we went back and we laid the brick on top of that. And then, we left a 1/4 inch gap. And then we backfilled the brick with more decomposed granite. I was really trying to make my garden a more pleasant place for me to go and work, but I also wanted it to be, aesthetically pleasing. I like order, so I like balance and flow, and so I wanted, even-sized beds here and there. I wanted something that was a pleasure to work in, but a pleasure to look at. You'll see that there's just very little bit of my garden that's mulched, and there's very little of it that's exposed, and it's because the soil that we've built over the last 5 years, I mean, twice a year we're amending it with compost, and so we've got a really nice, loose, arable soil that I can grow things very closely together, and I can get very good production, but it also chokes out the weeds. About the only thing that I'm continually putting in them now is every year I will buy a whole dump truck load of mushroom compost. Compost is actually a soil amendment, and there are some compounds in it that are readily available for plants when you put it in, but by and far it's the organic matter that you put in the soil that are going to feed the microbes. And so as the microbes, eat the compost, then they excrete urea or can keep that in their body, and then larger predators eat them, and as they decompose, then the urea or the nitrogen is released to your plants. So what you're trying to do once you build this is you're trying to get an active living soil. And so when you put compost in there every year, you're not putting nitrogen directly in there, you're trying to feed the organisms that are going to turn into the nitrogen that feeds your plants. So what I do is every year before I plant, I go in and I top dress with about 6 to 8 inches of this compost. When you put compost on that thick, the compost does 2 things. It slowly begins to leach into the soil, but also it acts as a layer of mulch on the top because it's fairly finely ground. And so as it gets wet, it actually kind of binds and makes a mulch.
Renewing the soil every season means hefty crops all year long.
Broccoli is my favorite thing to grow in the fall garden because unlike all the other cole crops that do so well, you know, you grow a cauliflower, big beautiful head, everybody loves them, you know, but you cut it down and you're done. You know, as soon as you cut that cauliflower head, you need to pull your foliage up and throw it on the compost pile because it's not going to produce anything else for you. But broccoli is not like that. Once you cut that big beautiful broccoli head, then little broccoli florets will pop up around the side of the cut. And so that broccoli plant will continue to produce. Now, you'll never get another big broccoli head like you had in the beginning, but you'll get little florets that are as big as a quarter, and if you get 100 of those, they make a nice little dinner.
To maximize his space, Jay built trellises to support climbers and other crops. In January, he plants English peas. In late spring, he adds tomatoes and other summer favorites.
Cucumbers, onions, you know, the main things that people grow. Like I say, I have that heirloom squash that I like called tutume. We also grow what we call the UFO squash or the white patty pan squash. We grow yellow squash, we've grown zucchini. In the spring, early spring, we'll put in a lot of green beans. We love the little contender bush beans, and one thing that I like about them is they make a nice border around the potager.
For even more organic food, he and Sally still harvest from a row garden too.
But I really do think that my gardening, it connects me to my past. And one thing that I have in my garden that I'm a really big proponent of is, you know, some people call them heirloom plants, some people call them pass-along plants, whatever you want to call them. I have a lot of plants in my gardens that people that I cared about gave to me. I have a beautiful pink rose in my potager, and that rose was given to me by my little sister, who died 2 years ago to Lou Gehrig's disease, or ALS. So when I go into the garden, in addition to the growing and all of the things that we as gardeners like, I'm also connected to my friends and my family in my garden.